Taxes world over are used to raise funds for government developmental programs. In a way, taxes also help in mitigating disparities between the rich and the poor and to reduce poverty. But administration of tax in most developing countries like Zambia has been a challenge, largely due to factors that include tax evasion, smuggling, and complicated international transactions. With a sluggish domestic and international economic picture, it seems more problems are anticipated in the collection of tax. Already, Zambia Revenue Authority is lagging behind its target by over 300 million kwacha, with only 2 months before the close of the year. Is there a way out? You're watching Sunday Interview, and I'm your host, Grevazo Zulu. My guest this evening is the Chief Taxman himself, the Zambia Revenue Authority Commissioner General, Kingsley Chanda. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Grevazo.
We're happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm also happy to be here.
Well, you've hit the ground running as Commissioner General for Zambia Revenue Authority. You're the man of the moment, barely a month in office, precisely a month in office, and you've issued a very public statement stating what kind of a Zambia Revenue Authority you want to see by locking out your members of staff who came late for work. Very strong statement.
Not really. I think that is not the statement I had planned to make, but I was prompted to do that because at that time I saw a queue of clients at our cash office waiting to be served, and and there was no one to serve them, so I had no option but to to just remind my fellow members of staff that they needed to be punctual.
A lot of people applauded you and said, this is the man we want. This is the work culture we want in the institution, probably in Zambia.
Well, the fact is that people have contracts which states exactly when they should report for work and when they are required to knock off. So if people find that to be too strict, they have an option of doing something else. So it's contractual that those that opt to serve the public do so, with a passion and observe time.
Have you seen an improvement since then?
Oh yes, oh yes. Actually, the following day, the car park was full by 7. I got to the office at 7:15, and most of our members of staff were there. So there has been, and even the knocking off. People are now ensuring that they do their work, and some officers are even staying late, which is a good sign.
Are you being oblivious of the fact that the traffic jams on the Zambian roads and the fact that your premises itself is not well located, no parking space? Do you have any plans to move the Zambia Revenue Authority headquarters to a more spacious place?
We would love to do that. In fact, there has been some land that was allocated to us somewhere near Chilenge, opposite Chilenge in Woodlands. But that is still under discussion. But that should not be the reason why people should report for work. I live quite far from ZRA. I live in New Kasama, but I'm always at the office by 7:30 latest. It's a question of when people start off to go to work. So if you start off late, obviously you end up being late. So normally around 06 hours, entering town is not a problem. So, and my members of staff have actually adjusted.
Usually when you have a thing like that, poor timekeeping and late coming, it's probably a symptom of one probably culture, and another symptom could be demotivation. Are you looking at a demotivated staff? Is that what you have?
Well, to some extent, officers in ZRA are demotivated, and we have identified that quite early. In my interaction with members of staff and my interaction with the board is something that our board has recognized, and we have jointly agreed to do something about it. One of the reasons why officers in ZRA are demotivated has been the issue of contracts. I think we are one of the very few organizations or parastatals in this country that have contracts at a very, very junior level. You know, we have officers that do assessments, that do enforcements, you know, fresh graduates from universities and colleges on contract, 3-year contracts. So, most of the officers do not see, you know, their contracts being renewed.
Is it because of performance?
Sometimes it's just, it's so discretionary. We do have a performance management system, but it doesn't work that well. So you find that, you know, it's all at the pleasure of management. So what we are trying to do about that, jointly with the board, is to ensure that the lower levels, the junior officers, are removed from the contract category, so that we give them permanent and pensionable, you know, contracts. The other thing, of course, is the general issue of conditions of service. Within the resources available, we intend to engage government on, you know, on that aspect as well. But, you know, one of the things that I keep appealing to my officers is that, you know, we are part of the, we share from the national basket. So, you know, we'll do our best to improve the conditions, but it will be within the resources available.
Well, let's come to the main issue why you exist, the reason why you exist as a taxman, as people that collect tax, to give money to the government, to ensure it's got enough resources to fund the budget and push the development agenda forward. You seem to be a long way from fulfilling this mandate that you've been given. You're looking at the statistics, probably. Some people will argue that you have not, it's been a while since you met the internationally accepted standard of probably 20% of annual GDP in terms of collection. That was 2013, way back.
Yeah. No, it's correct. When the revenue authorities were formulated, the objective was to move revenue contribution to GDP to 20%. Indeed, at the time that Zambia Revenue Authority was formed back in 1994, the revenue contribution to GDP was around 12%. And within 2 years of ZRA existence, the GDP was moved to about 16%. Between 2004 to about 2007, we were around 17% of GDP towards 18%. And, you know, things started going wrong. We are averaging 16% of GDP. The normal should be around 20%. And that is the, you know, the situation in our neighboring countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Actually, Zambia is, you know, is very, very low in terms of revenue contribution to GDP. However, we need to understand the reasons for that. It's not by accident that we have stagnated around 16%. There are a lot of things. You know, revenue collection is a factor of the environment, the tax environment. You know, what tax laws do you have? It's also a factor of the compliance, generally, how compliant are your taxpayers. Then on the other hand, it's a factor of enforcement. What are your enforcement strategies as a revenue authority? Under normal circumstances, you expect voluntary compliance, where taxpayers voluntarily declare, you know, what they owe the government. In Zambia, unfortunately, very few taxpayers do that. So, in that instance, then your enforcement strategy must kick in, so that those that are not compliant are forced to comply. Okay. In terms of the other factor, which is the tax law environment, I think we have adequate taxes. We have adequate laws, tax laws, that provides even for tax reliefs, you know, tax incentives right in the tax laws, which you know, taxpayers can access, and I think we have a stable environment in terms of yeah.
So basically, you're blaming it on enforcement, really.
Compliance. You haven't been good to it's largely poor compliance and a weak enforcement strategy.
That should be your vision.
Yes.
Now,
those are the things that we need to address. How do we make our taxpayers compliant, especially the informal sector? The retailers. We have one tax gravazo called VAT, value-added tax. It is one big tax that has been taking down the institution. Okay, it is in most cases negative. Why? Because retailers are not issuing tax invoices. Most businesses are not issuing tax invoices, and unfortunately, even consumers are not demanding for those tax invoices.
There isn't enough deterrence. You're not deterring these people from behaving the way they're behaving.
Well, that is what we have started doing now. Yeah. That is the message that I sent when I had my first press conference. Things will change moving forward. We ensure that we reward compliance and ruthlessly punish non-compliance.
So I know you've spoken very, very tough on tax evasion, and you've described it as murder.
Yeah.
How big is the problem?
Well, it is quite big. You can clearly see in some of our markets. I can single out, the Kamwala area, Comesa market, and even along the main business streets on the Copper Belt in Lusaka. You can clearly see that goods are being traded below cost. Where you take the normal, if you take the normal price of an item and assume taxes were paid, some of those prices on the shelves do not reflect any taxes. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you may have experienced this. You walk into a shop, you are buying something, somebody just gives you an item, gets the money and puts it in the till, and we have also noticed that some of our traders have the till, which has an inbuilt calculator, but on the side they still have a calculator. So they start by adding things using a calculator
and give the client an option.
Yeah,
so much
if you want VAT to be more expensive, if I don't charge you VAT, it will be less expensive. Now, naturally people.
But where are your people? You've singled out a particular market. This is Kamwala, and Kamwala is not that big. It's not even the size of any district at all. It's a small place.
Yeah.
Where are the officers of the ZRIA? You've just allowed that scourge to grow.
Well, this is what I'm saying. We have a new approach now. We are using enforcement officers and intelligence officers. What we are doing, and it's not a secret, I don't want anyone to be caught off guard and complain that they were not warned. So let me take this opportunity to warn the business community. What we are doing is we have recruited people, okay, that we are sending out in the markets throughout the country, who will be coming to your shops and ask to buy stuff. Okay? These officers will be backed by enforcement officers. Once a retailer or a shop owner transacts without issuing a tax receipt, within seconds, the enforcement officers will come in. Okay? And we shall assume that is how they run their business. And please, let me clarify this issue. We are not targeting any particular individuals or particular businesses. No, we are targeting everyone, black, white, yellow, whatever, as long as you are not tax compliant and as long as you are not issuing tax receipts.
The prosecution rate has been quite low. Are you understaffed? Maybe that's a question somebody should ask.
Not really. We have had several prosecutions actually. We have won a lot of cases, but you'll be surprised to learn that for not issuing a tax receipt, you get fined 2,000 kwacha when found guilty, and we have secured a lot of those convictions.
So it's not a deterrent.
No, it's not a deterrent at all. But what we have done is that we are proposing amendments to that law. But also there is another provision which we are now using, because if you are perpetually not issuing an invoice, our assumption is that you are evading tax. So instead of charging you for not issuing a tax invoice, we have now started charging for tax evasion. Okay?
Whose punishment is more stringent?
It's more stringent. It's 2 years in prison or payment of penalties as determined by the Zambia Revenue Authority. So that's what we are, we have started using. The reason is simple. Some of these people that we have pounced on in the last 2 weeks have actually been convicted before, and they have continued.
Because they paid their 2,000.
Exactly. And they thought, this time around, they thought they will still be charged because it is scaled. The first conviction is 2,000. The next conviction, I think, is 27,000 kwacha before you reach the stage of being jailed. But what we have decided to do is that we are not charging them for not issuing tax invoices. We are charging them for
tax evasion,
which is a more serious offense. And we'll see how for those that will not pay penalties, we'll see how the courts will handle, because we intend to go ahead and prosecute if they fail to pay the penalties.
You probably need a very aggressive approach. Somebody may ask, 22 years after the establishment of ZRA, we're still crying about this tax evasion as being a huge problem. What does it say about our systems, about our culture, attitude of the people?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, Grevazo, that's a very good observation. The best people to help us enforce tax collection are the consumers. It's the people that are actually buying these goods from the retailers or from the business. Those are the people that can help us to effectively enforce these tax laws. Because whenever you go in a shop to buy anything, demand for a tax receipt, demand for a tax invoice. Okay? Because that way, when ZRA goes to assess taxes of that business, they'll have a basis, they'll have documentary evidence. So to some extent, you are very right. We have contributed as Zambians to tax evasion, because we do not want to have traceable transactions. And transactions where taxes are due can only be traceable, easily traceable, if there are tax invoices, if there are tax receipts.
Now, ZRA at this point is either too lenient or inefficient. You have a lot of recourse where you can go to when you have these people that are defaulting, but you've not used these recovery instruments.
No, actually,
warrant of distress.
To the contrary, we have. In fact, one of the major cries of business now is that we are just issuing too many of these, activating too many of these instruments like garnishes, warrant of distress, and prosecutions. But unfortunately, we had to get into this aggressive, position, because all the public, the persuasion was not working. Okay, but this doesn't mean we will be combatant. No, we want people to be happy to pay tax. Okay, because it's important. When you pay tax, government, is given access to resources to provide social goods. Okay, and social goods include schools, hospitals, financing our military, everything, all the public good, everything that a country needs. As I said in my speech earlier, without taxes, there can be no country. Okay, because government can only push its programs if there are adequate taxes being collected to finance those programs. Okay, so
when you say you've used these instruments too often and too many times, the Auditor General's report speaks contrary to what you're saying.
Yeah, that's true.
When you read, for instance, they give an example. I think that's a 2015, the latest Auditor General's report. It states that ZRA issued warrants of distress on 299 taxpayers in amounts totaling 148 billion, which had since expired. And as of September 2016, the assets of defaulting taxpayers had not been seized. Yeah. Is this mercy or just inefficiency?
No. We have responded to the Auditor General's report. Since it's a public document, I'll explain. Most of those cases are actually in court. And as you are aware, we are not allowed to enforce while the case is before the courts of law. Okay, we have to wait until those cases are disposed of. For those that are not in court, we have already issued the final demand letters, and we are just waiting for the 30 days expiry, because we give 30 days, after which we shall enforce. The reason is simple, Grevazo. Sometimes there could be situations of wrong assessments, okay, where if a client has no documentation, we were talking about businesses not issuing tax invoices and therefore not having a traceable basis of their transactions, we are allowed under the law to estimate what we think has been the taxes lost. Now, once you do that and you issue a demand notice, some clients have been forced to bring those documents because they find that the assessment is far much higher than what it should have been, if their documents were actually used and genuine documents are produced. So that's why we give them 30 days to say we are demanding so many taxes, and you have 30 days in which to respond with, with either a payment or an explanation why we should not, go ahead to enforce. So some of those cases are within that period. However, the bulk of those assessments are actually before the courts of law, either in the High Court or before the Revenue Appeals Tribunal.
So when you say a person is able to come back and say, now I have the documents, meaning the law is very weak. It allows the offender to waste your time.
No, not at all. Actually, the tax laws in Zambia are quite punitive. In some cases like VAT, you can charge up to 600% penalty. Okay, if you were to pay 100 million, you end up paying 700 million. You have 100 million of what you should have paid, which we call the principal tax, and 600 million as a penalty. The Customs and Excise Act does allow penalties of up to 300%, of the duty paid value. So they are quite punitive. And also, there are also imprisonment provisions, where a client, has fraudulently, avoided, evaded tax. So they are quite lenient. But, we are not in the business of punishing. We are in the business of collecting revenue. Okay?
In the first place, you probably have to be in the business of setting precedent, making people believe that they cannot default at will.
Yes, that is correct. And I think we've done that recently, and you continue seeing more of that.
I'm still stuck on the Auditor General's report. It has well spoken about you meeting your targets, collecting above target for the year 2015, but it still indicts you on weaknesses, that you're failing to collect tax on probably 15 types of taxes where you didn't meet your targets.
Yeah.
Is this acceptable?
No, of course it's not acceptable, but you need to understand that, as I said, the environment in the nation has a lot of impact on revenue collection, especially the economic situation. You are fully aware that Zambia is largely dependent on copper, okay? And you saw the nosediving of copper prices, on the international market. Now, what this did was to have a spillover effect to other, businesses that depend on mining. So all the suppliers of the, suppliers to the mining industry were affected. You saw over 4,000 employees being laid off. That is tax in terms of pay as you earn, personal income tax. Obviously, with laying off of over 4,000 people, it also entailed that production went down. So, so there was that spillover effect. So the economy was in a depressed situation. And when that happens, anywhere in the world, taxes gets affected. But
the taxes that are being affected in this case, we're not looking at pay as you earn. You made your target on that. Even talk company tax, I think you made your target on that. But you failed to meet your target on issues of clear beer, airtime, withholding tax, Are these really affected by
Yes,
a slow economy?
yes, they are.
And when we look at withholding tax,
Yeah.
the most glaring, it just shows zero. Nothing was collected.
No, actually, that's not true. It's not true that withholding. You know, withholding tax is on
rent.
On
rent.
There's withholding tax on rent. There's withholding tax on
rent and interest. I think the entry shows nothing.
And also and also consultant services. So it's not possible that we collected zero. However, it is true that some of those tax lines underperformed for various legitimate reasons. But that doesn't mean that the issue of compliance and poor enforcement, you know, are not part of the explanation to that, apart from the economic situation. But there has also been laxity, and that is the reason why at the moment we have a lot of debt that we are enforcing. Okay, we keep discovering a lot of outstanding taxes that taxpayers have not paid. Of course, some of the cases are before courts of law. We have other taxpayers that have gone into time to pay agreements where they are liquidating their taxes slowly. That clearly shows when you're having an accumulation of your debt in terms of a debt stock, in terms of your taxes, it shows that these taxes are not being enforced at the time that they are supposed to be enforced. Okay, so the inefficiency, yes, there is a bit of inefficiency, and we are unlocking that for using various ways. One of them is a taxpayer education. We will ramp up our taxpayer education, and to that extent, I mean, for that reason, we are actually setting up a fully fledged public relations department. We will soon be recruiting some people to really go help having a communication strategy to communicate details about collections, about tax due dates, about everything, so that people can be informed. The other thing that we are doing, of course, is the audits. Okay, we have increased the number of audits, and we'll be targeting a lot of sectors, including the areas which the Auditor General observed. For us, we appreciate such such recommendations. The other thing that we are doing is also to maximize efficiencies as a result of our modernization. As you are aware, we have gone electronic on most of our processes for two reasons. One, to improve efficiency, but also as an anti-corruption anti-corruption measure, because we feel that with technology there is very limited opportunity for our staff to fidget with with the system, and also it gives our taxpayers a good platform, a secure platform, through which they can make their payments without any intervention. Yeah, exactly.
Now let's look at you were at a press briefing recently, and you stated that you are below target by 318 million, and you have 2 years to close the year.
2 months.
2 months, sorry, to close the year. Yeah. What has caused this?
Well, the underperformance is over a period of 9 months. Okay, and as I explained earlier, there are legitimate economic reasons why we underperformed. Okay, but also there are also issues of the things that we are correcting now to ensure that our informal sector, traders in particular, comply. We have a lot of cases of smuggling, and let me talk about this. We have the so-called cross-border traders, okay, that keep smuggling beer, they smuggle groceries, they smuggle all sorts of things,
cigarettes,
and where cigarettes, and where they pay the grocery undervalue, understate the cost, so that they pay less tax and so on. We've changed our approach to that. In the past, it was gamble. They smuggle. If they manage to pass through all our checkpoints and the borders, fine. They make a lot of money. We catch them, we fine them. Okay? This time, we want to take a different approach. When we find any smuggled truck, the first thing is we shall seize the truck and forfeit that truck to the state. Okay? Because we want transporters to work with us. Transporters must not allow smugglers to use their trucks. So they must ensure that when they are dealing with an importer who asks them to pick their goods from Dar es Salaam or Deben or Wavis Bay is legitimate and is somebody who's going to go through the front door and pay the taxes.
So where does that huge truck pass with all the beer, with all the cargo, the cigarettes,
it does
the
pass through, yeah, it does pass through the borders. Sometimes it's through the borders. Sometimes these are goods that have been smuggled, in small quantities by people using bicycles, put somewhere in a warehouse at a border area like Livingstone or Katimamulilo, and then loaded in the night. Okay? Sometimes these things are actually smuggled all the way from source into Zambia through our borders. In some instances, our officers have been involved, conniving, and we have taken appropriate action. And of course, we want to make that also stiffer, because if we are going to be so punitive to the smugglers, we must also be punitive to our officers who facilitate such vices.
So apart from seizing the trucks and forfeiting it to the state, what other measures have you put in place to address the issue of smuggling? Yeah,
of course, we are decentralizing our anti-smuggling operations. I don't know if you have seen our patrol vehicles. They are marked MCU, which is mobile compliance units. So we are decentralizing, and we want to have them for now in all our 10 provincial centers. Okay. Then apart from that, we are also want to continue the use of scanners, because at least scanners help us to inspect trucks quicker, intrusively, without opening, and ensuring that the results from there are followed up instead of just ignored. So there are a lot of anti-smuggling operations that we will continue doing, and that will be coupled with the stiffer punishment. The smugglers will lose their goods, and the transporter will lose their truck.
Now, the experts are predicting a very gloomy picture of the growth of the economy. Do you hope to meet your target by the end of the year? Is there hope?
That's our objective. Our objective is to meet our last quarter targets, but over and above that, collect the under collection that we had in the last 9 months. And we hope to achieve that through increased enforcement activities, making our borders a bit more tighter. We are sending more staff to the border. That started last week. And then we are also increasing our audits and also debt collection. So we think that with these measures, unfortunately, I want to thank the Ministry of Finance. They have funded us for that. And so we will have no excuse. I think we will do our very best to meet our target.
During his tour of Kasumbalesa border post, the Finance Minister, Mr. Felix Mtati, hinted that lack of infrastructure and bureaucracy is really affecting collection of revenue by ZRA. And he cited one issue, that of toll gates. And he stated that there's no reason why these toll gates should not be in place in border areas. All it takes is a statutory instrument. And he instructed ZRA to draft that SI. Yes. Has any progress been made on that?
Yeah, definitely. We have worked on that. And as you are aware, there is a budget process that is coming up. So that will go to Parliament. I mean, the fact is that we are an implementing agency. The Minister of Finance is they are our masters. So when they give such instructions, we always respond, and we have done that. So it will be, we'll just wait for Parliament to enact the appropriate, the necessary enabling legislation, and then we'll implement.
How is lack of infrastructure affecting your collection of revenue?
Of course. Now I was talking about smuggling. We do not have proper controls at some borders. Where a border is not properly fenced, and you have porous routes through which trucks can pass, especially Nakonde. If you look at Nakonde, that border is just one whole village combining Zambia and Tanzania, and trucks move in and out of, it becomes difficult to control. But also infrastructure also does affect processing efficiency, because if you have trucks spending 3-4 days at the border because of your limited processing capacity and the infrastructure, you are slowing down your collections. and also slowing down the number of times that truck would drop a load and go back to pick another load. So if a truck can do 5 loads in a month between Durban and Lusaka, because of border delays, they are reduced to 2 loads. So that affects, revenue collection. That's what the minister was talking about, that we need to ensure that there's border efficiency. We must ensure that there's seamless clearing of goods, so that people don't have to stay at the border beyond 24 hours.
So when you speak about upgrading this border infrastructure, how many are you targeting to turn into one-stop border posts?
Our target is to turn all of them into one-stop border posts, but we want to do it as and when the infrastructure is ready. Right now, the Nakonde infrastructure is ready. We will soon start working on Nakonde. Kasumbalesa, the infrastructure is there already. We'll soon start talking to our colleagues in the DRC and see how we can expedite the movement of trucks. Chirundu is already done. Katima Mulilo, we have good infrastructure. We will start working on Kasumbalesa in terms of one-stop border posts. Then Kazungula is under construction, as you are aware. There's a bridge coming up. Part of the preparation for that infrastructure has been a component of one-stop border post. Chanida, we should be able to finish Chanida before the end of this year. Again, that is another border that we shall target.
Okay. Now you did mention a bit about staff being involved in shady and in illegal deals.
Yeah.
You've come under attack on allegations of corruption at ZRA.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you dealing with these? Are you lacking in terms of integrity?
Yeah. Well, corruption is a serious problem in our institution, and we don't take it lightly. And this is why many years ago we decided to set up a very strong anti-smuggling unit within ZRA. We call it Internal Affairs Unit. But apart from that, we've gone a step further to identify reasons that precipitates this scourge, because there must be a reason. As you are aware, Grevazo, there cannot be corruption where there is no constraint. Okay? Where there are constraints, there will always be opportunities for corruption. So one of the things that we are trying to do is to remove those constraints by being efficient and by ensuring that we make most of our processes electronic, thereby limiting the physical interaction between taxpayers and our staff. Apart from that, we are also identifying some of the reasons that could compel our officers to be corrupt. I earlier on talked about job insecurity because of the contracts and probably the poor working of our performance management system. We intend to, to sort out these issues. We must ensure that our performance-based, our performance management system is working and it's objective and it guarantees somebody to continue in employment with ZRA. Not that it will eventually just be the discretion of senior management whether somebody continues in the job or not, as is the case now. Okay. The second thing we are doing is for those junior officers who are so prone, the category of officers, we call them the grades. They are in the grades we call ZRA 04, 05s, and 06. This is the category of officers that runs that institution in terms of revenue collection.
And these are the people with poor conditions.
These are the ones on contract. Yes, these are the ones on contract.
And this is where the scourge is.
Most of those problems are, we have a lot of resignations in this category, especially at 06 level. These are university graduates and college graduates that we recruit. So we have high levels, high incidences of resignations and also disciplinary cases. Okay, so we have had to sit down as senior management to dissect why we have this challenge, and we discovered all those things that we are now addressing.
Recently, we heard about 15 members of staff who were suspended at Yondola office, and there were issues of investigations pending conclusion of the investigations. Yeah. What is the update? What is the latest on this matter? Well,
the latest is that the investigations have been completed. and those that were found with cases to answer will appear, because we do have a very transparent and objective disciplinary process. We don't just fire people based on allegations. First we investigate. Once we have investigated and we feel that somebody has a case to answer, then we bring them before a panel of independent judges that will talk to them and decide whether they are indeed guilty and should be separated. So that is the process. The investigations have been concluded, and these officers will soon be appearing before the...
You also suspended licenses for 27 clearing agents.
Yes. Yeah, it's the same process. As you are aware, we do license clearing companies. It's a practice in most jurisdictions, and Zambia is not an exception. We do license them, and when we license them, they are supposed to adhere to certain standards of operations. And one of the key things that they are not supposed to get involved in is corruption. So where corruption is suspected, we take action, and then they also get investigated like our officers.
So that's 15 members of staff, 27 clearing agents. Yeah. This is a big problem at one center. What is happening in other areas? Is it the same situation?
I can only pray.
Probably not exposed.
I can only pray that it's not the same situation. It would be wrong for me to assume that this is just 15 out of 100, But I know there are some officers in that institution that have high levels of integrity, that are very committed to delivering for the country, that are very passionate about their job. There are those, and they are just as concerned as the members of the public.
Should we probably ask, is the situation that bad?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if it was really that bad, we wouldn't have been, collecting even what we are collecting. The fact is, like in many other institutions, you do have some bad eggs. You do have some bad eggs, and that is why we want to go just beyond firing people. We want to understand why. As I said earlier, if there is no constraint in your operations, you cannot create an opportunity for corruption. Okay? Now, what happens in some cases is that certain constraints are inbuilt in the way we do things as an organization, and we are changing that. Some constraints are created by officers.
Deliberately, to make the public panic.
Exactly. Deliberately create a situation where, a taxpayer is put in a negotiating position. And, in the process, to get out of that situation, taxpayers, make offers of, they offer bribes. And in the process, corruption takes place. So we are trying to identify root causes. As much as we continue punishing the perpetrators as and when we catch them and take them through the due process, we are also trying to work on the root causes for such vices.
Does this explain the audit query on the fact that ZRA recorded reduction in tax arrears without supporting payments worth 80.2 million?
Well, the fact is that these are issues that are being investigated. We take them seriously. We are also looking at refunds. If you notice in the report, the Auditor General was also concerned about the level of refunds. We are looking at that. We shall investigate. But apart from that, we are also seriously looking at improving the approval process and the checking process, so that we are able to prevent things before they happen. As I said, we take Auditor General's observations and recommendations seriously, and every commissioner and director has been given a copy of that document, and we ensure that those controls that have been broken or abrogated actually rectified. So we will do that.
Overall, before we leave this topic about the Auditor General's report, it's an overall serious indictment on ZRA, a lot of leakage and slippage of taxpayers' money.
Well, the fact is that
unaccounted for, a lot of unaccounted for, and weaknesses and collected money.
The fact is that we have responded to the Auditor General's report. Okay, there are certain observations that we may not necessarily agree, and we have explained. you know. But there are a lot of good observations there that are genuinely wrong on our part. And as I said, we take that seriously and we shall correct it.
Let's move on to the mines and VAT and taxes in the mines. There seems to be this general feeling that mines have not paid enough tax. If at all they even pay, I mean, some people believe they haven't paid up.
Yeah. Well, I think that is not true. Currently, the mining companies are contributing 15% of our total collections. 15% of our total collections. Mind you, mining companies are largely exporters. Okay, we do have some mining companies that are selling locally to each other for processing, those that do not have processing facilities, but ultimately the metals get exported. And you know the tax regime in terms of exporters, and not just the mining companies, all manufacturers that export, okay, enjoy zero rating of VAT, okay? Even if you go to a manufacturer of soaps or sweets, once they export, their products are zero rated. And largely the mining companies are, you know, but they pay company income tax, they pay customs duty when they import, they pay mineral royalty tax, okay? They pay VAT when they purchase goods locally, and when they import, they pay all those taxes. And as I said, out of all the total number of taxes and total number of taxpayers, mining companies contribute 15%. In fact, in 2011, when there was windfall tax, their contribution was 27%.
You have been written off by experts and former mine employees that ZRA does not have the capacity to collect tax from the mines.
We do. Right now we have a project which has been sponsored by the Swedish government. It's a mineral value chain project. What we are looking at in that project is to see the entire value chain of copper from the time the ore is extracted from the soil to the time that it makes exit out of the country, and the proceeds of that sale comes to the country. It's a full circle monitoring. And that project, I did talk about it 2 days ago. That project is now fully implemented. All the mining companies are on board, and we hope that with this strict monitoring of the production, we should be able to to see their contribution to taxes. The other issue that you need to take into account, Grevaso, is that company income tax is based on profit. Okay, if a mine is investing in a particular project, you know, they invest in expansion projects, they invest in modernization of their equipment and so on, of their facilities. If they are investing, that becomes part of their cost. So at the time of declaring a profit, they may declare a loss as a result of those investments. That we are actively, checking. So once that happens, that company will not declare profits in a particular, and therefore will not pay company income tax. Again, this does not just apply to mining companies alone. It applies to any investor.
And that's where the argument is. People are saying, for the mines, it's difficult for even you to audit and know whether they've made a profit or not.
We do
you
audit them.
Not probably have the expertise.
We
you probably don't even know where their money goes after they've sold their copper.
Well, we wouldn't have been collecting 15% of our revenues from the mining companies. However,
maybe you would have been collecting 30%.
Exactly. I'm not saying we don't need to do anything about it. No, more has to be done. Okay, more has to be done, and more is being done through that mineral value chain project, and also increase the audits of the mines. Okay, we are able to to engage them. The reality is that as much as we are talking about mines not paying enough tax, as ZRA we owe the mining companies a lot of money in VAT refunds. We owe them money. Okay, so when people look, I mean, people that criticize sometimes don't.
So probably
look
the
at
taxes
detail.
are knocked off. It's back to zero when
No, not necessarily. We net, I mean, our net, you see, when the mines, okay, if we look at the entire chain, when the mines employ people, those people pay as you earn. Effectively, that income is coming from the mines, okay? Even though it is given to the people and the deduction is done to the, otherwise, if somebody is not employed, they don't pay any pay as you earn. So that is one benefit. The other thing is that the mines are importing spare parts, they are importing chemicals, they are importing capital equipment. Some of the items are duty-free, but most of the items, like the spare parts and other consumables, they are taxable. We collect duty, customs duty, ranging from 5% to as much as 25%. So that tax is the final tax, okay? However, with all the perception that they don't pay tax, we have actually paid particular attention to the mining sector.
Former finance minister did state
as it is now, yep, they are the most audited taxpayers in this country.
Most monitored?
Most monitored, most audited.
Is the Zambian getting best value from the mines?
Yes,
would
we are. But
would you say that with confidence?
We can do more. That's why we continue employing all these tools. We continue having all these projects. We continue training people in understanding the sector. It's because we also feel that we can do better.
Mm-hmm. You had plans, and these were announced by the former finance minister, that you wanted to recruit mining engineers to tax audit and increasing capacity for officers to understand issues like transfer pricing.
Yeah.
Has that been done?
Yes, we are doing that. In fact, every year, what we are doing is we are recruiting about 20 fresh graduates from the university and colleges who we are putting in a category of management trainees. The idea is we want to get these members of staff and make them specialized in various revenue areas, including mining. And we will continue looking at other skills that we need, like the mining engineers or even former engineers that worked in the mines, to come and join ZRA so that we are able to, to understand from. So that effort will continue. Okay, as soon as we have a window and we have the resources to recruit, you see some of the adverts that we, the skills that we shall be looking forward to.
Are you on the same page now with the mines in terms of VAT and VAT refunds?
No, not at all. We still owe them about 500 million, okay, in verified refunds, and we are, dismantling that debt. We also have some unverified refund claims. Those will not do anything until the verifications are done. I think so far so good. We have engaged them. This is not something that ZRA has to decide on its own. We have engaged the mining companies directly with individual mines, but also through the Chamber of Commerce. And our ministry also has been very active in dealing with this situation. So our approach is seriously not to be taking each other to court. Okay, I feel concerned that we have a lot of big taxpayers, in the mining sector that have taken the authority to court on various, tax disputes. My intention is that we reach an agreement. Okay, we reach a settlement where we move forward. Okay, we need them, they need us, and we just have to iron out our misunderstanding. So our approach will be more consultative, it will be more collaborative, and avoid confrontational things, like going to court or garnishes, whatever. So I'm hoping that we should, we should reach a stage where, the mines happily pay taxes, and we also have the capacity to refund them as and when we owe them
the money.
Yeah.
Well, we seem to be running out of time, but I'll give you a minute just to explain your vision. You are new at ZRA, not very new, you've been there, but now you're heading the institution. Yeah. Where do you want to see ZRA after probably 5 years or 3?
Well, I want to see a leaner, technology-based, but extremely robust ZRA. Okay? That shall be run by happy employees, motivated employees, and that will ensure that we deliver on the mandate to the people of Zambia through the government of the Republic of Zambia.
What should the public see in ZRA?
They will see a more friendly ZRA, but a ZRA that will not tolerate any tax evasion, any smuggling. But we are encouraging the public to, come forward, give us the information. Even when they just want to share a cup of tea, even with me directly, they should feel free to do that.
I'll definitely come for a cup of tea.
Yeah, most welcome.
It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you.
Well, you've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was the Commissioner General for the Zambia Revenue Authority, Mr. Kingsley Chanda. Till next week at the same time, pleasant viewing.